It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Alex, Andy, and Rene are here to talk about the latest from Apple. We'll talk about Carplay. We'll talk about the Apple ad on the Oscar and why it's so incredible. We'll even show Apple's original ad on the Oscars from 2007. It's all coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 443, recorded Tuesday, February 24th, 2015. Gateway to Apple Pay. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/MacBreak. And by Personal Capital. With Personal Capital, you can grow and protect your wealth. Best of all, it's free. And for a limited time, Twit viewers could qualify for up to $10,000 on any new account. To sign up, go to personalcapital.com/MacBreak. And by LegalZoom. Get your life organized and protect your family with a will or living trust, or incorporate your business or form an LLC. LegalZoom, not a law firm, but can connect you with an independent attorney of your choice. Visit LegalZoom.com and use offer code MBW to receive $10 off at checkout. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show that covers Macintosh and Apple news all over the place. Joining us, as always, from bitterly cold Montreal, where he hasn't seen a temperature above zero in weeks, Mr. Rene Ritchie of imore.com.
I forgot the temperatures come in the positive, Leo.
Well, negative, is it centigrade or Celsius? Would you tell me?
We say Celsius.
Okay. Because it's
Centigrade
Fahrenheit.
sounds more formal.
Since Mr. Fahrenheit gets acknowledgement for his scale, Mr. Celsius should get acknowledgement for his.
I'm pretty sure Andy and I are switching to Kelvin.
In metric, it should be centigrade, because that's more. It feels more metric.
It does. It feels more European, too.
Yeah. The only reason I ask is I was listening to a book, this biography of the Beatles that Andy recommended. Hi, Andy Ihnatko, Chicago Sun-Times.
Hello,
Good to see you. And we've got two people on Fields of White. Mr. Alex Lindsay from the snowed out Pittsburgh.
It's still the snow.
Yay.
We haven't gotten rid of it yet.
We're sharing one studio for warmth. We're trying to create the illusion that these are two separate studios.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. They're huddled.
Just like near the end of times, communities tend to clutter together so that they don't expect to survive together, but they can see the end through with somebody else.
Yeah. and it's a three-dog night.
It makes the eventual descent into cannibalism easier.
You have to huddle. No, I was just saying this Beatles book, they said centigrade, and I went, wait a minute, whoa. I thought it was Celsius. So do you think in the UK they still say centigrade?
Graded by hundreds? Is that what that means?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Yeah. Because it is 0 to 100. 100's boiling, 0's freezing.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Leo. What's the Fahrenheit scale based on?
That's a really good question.
I have no idea.
212 is boiling, 32 is freezing. What does that mean? Where did that come from?
It was designed to improve memories in early students.
Yeah, exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, Apple is now double the size of Exxon.
And growing.
And growing. Actually, the stock went down a little this morning, but I was just kind of stunned as the stock continues to just climb. How long before Apple's back at 200 after a 7-for-1 split? 300, 400 is the sky the limit. The stock market loves Apple. The market cap for Apple now, $765 billion. Apple is worth at least double any other publicly traded U.S. company.
I mean, a lot of this is just making up for undervaluation that occurred previously. It was never at Amazon levels when you had the price to earnings ratio or things like that. It's been chronically suppressed is the wrong word because the stock market makes no sense to any rational person and is probably closer akin to gambling than it is to any mathematical transaction.
I don't really.
But a lot of a lot of companies that made less money and had less growth had much higher valuations than Apple by proportion, and now Apple is gaining some of that.
$132 at the time of recording per share. I wonder, of course, I guess we have to pop a bottle of champagne if they make $1 trillion company.
Well, I don't think it's a question of whether they're going to. I think it's a question of when. I mean, I think that's more of a. I mean, they are definitely on that trajectory.
Boy, I am really starting to regret my recommendation 3 years ago that everybody sell their Apple stock because it's guaranteed to go down.
No, regret not buying it when they sold, Leo.
I'm not allowed to buy. I don't allow myself to buy, so I don't have. It's only others I've hurt.
Shell companies, bonds.
Actually, for all I do have mutual funds in my retirement, and I don't check what they're made up of for that reason. But it's possible I somewhere have some Apple stock. Golly. Now get ready because all the smartwatches are coming. The last minute smartwatches are coming. Pebble has announced a new one with a color screen. Pebble said that they had sold. They didn't say exactly sell. It sounded like they have 1 million watches in the channel, is what it sounded like when they released that information.
They hired the WebOS guys. Mark Gurman had that on 9 to 5 Mac a couple days ago.
WebOS guys?
WebOS team. Yeah, just to rejuvenate their operating system.
Oh, that's interesting. The color screen watch, and they're going to do it on Kickstarter. Wait a minute. They don't have enough money to do this?
Yeah, they did say that despite the fact that we've pushed all these watches out, we're still a very, very small company with not a whole lot of resources. Plus, if you've got all these people who will easily fund you
$4
million dollars in 30 minutes, go ahead. It's welcome to 2015.
The first Pebble, wow, they're already at 4.7 million. Yeah. The first Pebble was very famous back in 2012 when Kickstarter was just discovering the world, and the world was just discovering it. It raised $10 million. Say again?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was watching your feed. Go ahead.
Oh, we'll go back to that shot in a second. Sorry. Jason and I have dueling Pebble.
Yeah,
doing Pebble Kickstarters
between them, and we'll see when they reach
so the
parity
one that
with
says
each other.
e-paper
it's a
watch.
Flipperama.
This one is the first one. It says e-paper watch for iPhone and Android. I actually I bought into that one.
Me too.
I was a backer. I pledged, as it says here, $125.
He made the Impulse watch for BlackBerry. He was well known in Canada, Eric Michkowski.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then he moved from Waterloo to Palo Alto and made a device that its future was not as linked to BlackBerry as the previous one.
But the $10 million that they raised in that first one got them as a company, got them going. I remember it took a while to get the watch. I can't remember how long, but it seemed like a year to get the watch, something like that.
Yeah, it took me 13 months.
And now the Pebble Time. Oh, yeah, because, in fact, I originally had a color body, and they said, you'll get it faster if you just get the black one. So I changed it. I remember now. It's all coming back to me. So just, I don't know. Is that him?
Yeah, Eric.
I'm the founder of Pebble. You may remember Pebble from our first campaign.
Who could forget?
When a bunch of you supported our quest to
They're halfway, in one day, they're halfway back to where they were last time.
Over 1 million of you.
We might actually be able to watch the number flip over to 5 million.
Yeah, we're watching it in live real time.
Everybody, that's me. It's nice to have $750 billion in equity, but when you have the ability to simply say, "Hi guys, can you pre-order our watch?" and suddenly you've got $5 million. Yeah, that's an indication that they got some time to figure out how to compete with Android Wear and Apple. I thought it was kind of interesting that they're going for a $200 color watch that's a little bit more interactive. That's something that's closer to Android Wear and closer to Apple Watch. One of the I think best moves they made last year was to say we will have a $99 monochrome watch, so that we're going to leverage off of all the attention that smartwatches are going to get, but we're going to give you something that people are just going to say, $100 isn't nothing, but I got $100. I don't have to really think as much about my first device of this kind being a $100 device as opposed to my first device of this kind being a $350 device.
I just think somebody at Apple heard Andy tell them they should Kickstarter the Apple car, see if they can get to $500 million.
You know what? How much would they raise? They'd raise $1 billion. Easy.
They get so many pre-sales. Do you think that they would not sell 5,000 cars instantly if they simply said, you will be the first 5,000 in line?
Yeah. Yep. It does raise this question of what is Kickstarter anymore? If is it now just a pre-sale site? As opposed to...
Well, I think a lot of people have considered it a promotional site. We've definitely worked with some folks who shoot videos and so on and so forth. They have the money to do it. They are using it because it's a great promotional platform, as well as guaranteeing a little bit more certainty over exactly how many they should make in the first run.
In many cases, the amount raised, even when you get to these giant stratospheric numbers, isn't sufficient to make the watch or make a success of the watch. It's just seed money, even at $10 million or $5 million.
Also, again, it lets them really define a first run.
There it goes. Just crossed $5 million.
They know
that was fast
while we were watching. Holy cow! Maybe I better get into this project before it closes.
Now, by observing this, we have changed this. Right now, everyone at Twit is donating right now. So
that's right.
Welcome,
they
Pebble.
wouldn't have made it without us.
Yes,
they got the MacBreak bump.
It's kind of stunning. I mean, it went up today.
A few hours ago.
5
million, couple of hours.
It really makes me wonder why I'm not pre-selling stuff on Kickstarter myself.
Oh, can we Kickstarter the next week's MacBreak?
Why not? Why not? I'm leaving money on the table. So the minimum pledge is $159, and then you get your choice of a Pebble watch in any of 3 colors. That'll be $40 off the retail price. They're estimating May 2015. That one's all gone. $179 still has a few left, like 7,867. For the regular, for $179. 2 of them. 5 of them, 10 of them.
I love Pebble, but they had to get that best smartwatch you could buy up there like immediately.
Yeah, last chance. And you have time maybe. Well, they really timed it well. It ends March 27th. So you probably, they end it right before Apple could possibly be selling the Apple Watch. Wow. All right. Well, I'm not to knock them. 7 days battery life. They've done, given the kind of limited things that we've learned that Apple, a lot of the things Apple wanted to do at making a health device, they couldn't. So it's not so much less than an Apple Watch in functionality, and it's considerably less in price.
And they have much less API access than Apple does.
And if you're an Android user, it's it's that or Android Wear.
It's multi-platform. The other nice thing is that it's going to be interesting to see how people react to the Apple Watch as a wristwatch, because the Pebble's greatest asset is sometimes the fact that every time you look at the watch, it will tell you what time it is or whatever piece of information you want to put on there, because it's e-paper. It's always lit. Whereas Apple Watch and Android Wear, you have to either trade off a lot of battery life, or you have to be aware that, okay, yes, I flicked my wrist exactly the right way and then waited a fraction of a second, all to find out that, okay, well, I actually am late in the time that it took me for this watch to light up.
There is a new watch coming out. I got an invitation. Wait a minute now. I don't know if I'm embargoed on this or not. Can you be, if somebody sends you an email with information unsolicited, can you say you're embargoed? Can he say, but don't tell anybody?
You have to agree to the embargo. If they send you unsolicited text, it's yours to do with whatever you want to with.
Well, I don't want to make any enemies, so I won't say, well, what the hell? This is another smartwatch. This is an event they're having. Actually, there's a couple of things coming this week. A box comes from Motorola tomorrow, sometime between 6 and 8. We don't know what it is.
A Moto box. It
could be Superfish, your very own copy. I don't know.
I think they just want to make
Superfish.
Lenovo.
They just want to make sure that like all the tech press is like at home, so that when they have the real event in New York for the people they like, they get the real scoop.
Well, I agreed to take the box, but I'm not going to be here 6 to 8 a.m. I'll give it to Mike Elgin, who can open it on Tech News today at 10 a.m. But everybody, you got, I'm sure, Andy, you'll be getting a box.
I have been informed that I will be getting something on Wednesday. I don't know if it'll be a box or simply an email, but
I think they said a box. I think they said the box.
Android Central, I think, is getting a box.
I think we're getting a box too. Oh, you're maybe not on the box list.
I might not be on the box list as long as I get the information. That's really all I need.
Yeah, I don't really need the box. Anyway, I'm assuming it's a replacement for the Moto 360. It's too early for a Moto X phone. I think it's going to be a 360 replacement.
Moto 720.
It's pretty funny though that they really are taking a page off of Apple here, where there's the announcement has like this curious phrase that kind of invites you to try to unwrap it and try to figure out, oh, do they mean it's going to be a VR goggle set? Is it going to be like a new better screen for the Moto G? It's Apple. People, there's a lot of good stuff to steal from Apple. Phones are just the tip of the iceberg.
And then I got an interesting invitation for an event Thursday in San Francisco, featuring the red violin from the movie, the red Stradivarius violin played by its owner, Elizabeth Pitcairn, which would be wonderful just to see that. But it came from Philippe Kahn and the Motion X folks, and it's a horological smartwatch. We've seen this attempt before, or at least we've heard news of attempts by the Swiss watchmakers to make smartwatches that are also watches. You know, like
by the horologists.
They're horologists. Their brands will be Alpina, Frederic, Constant, and Mondaine, all three well-known brands. I'm not sure what exactly this is going to be. But
Helvetica.
That's a beautiful watch, isn't it? So this, wouldn't you love that? The Swiss Railway watch.
Yeah.
Look just like your Apple clock.
Not anymore.
I have the real thing.
Do you?
Yeah, it was like my favorite watch until I got the Moto 360.
It's so beautiful. Look at that. The Swiss Railway. So they're going to make, they're going to be one of the partners in this. If you go to mmt.ch, mmmt.ch, this is the watch. So I don't know exactly what we're going to see here. But this is another one. And I think if you are a smartwatch manufacturer, you darn well better get this thing out.
These Rolex guys aren't just going to walk in, Leo.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very curious. I think there are people who would want a watch that is more of an heirloom, more like a Mondaine, than one that's a computer on your wrist. But there's all kinds. The world is full of all kinds of people.
Diversity is good.
Yeah.
It's a square pillow, but there are other watches that are shaped like square pillows, so that's not necessarily
Time is a
drawback.
flat circle, Andy.
Lunchtime doubly so.
The MMT horological watch platform, I guess, is what this is. It's a watch platform.
Oh, good.
Of course it is.
That's even better than a watch. I was hoping to have a platform on my wrist.
None of my watches have a platform
for a tiny elephant, like a really tiny.
Well, Android Wear is a platform, right? And that's why I wonder what Motorola could do, because Wear is tightly controlled by Google. All Android Wear watches have basically the same software, right?
Isn't the HTC one getting some attention?
Is there? Is that out yet?
As another round dial, they basically took the guts of the one that they released with that fake number ring around it and put into a much smaller and classier case.
It's called a Petra.
It really looks very, very smart.
Yeah.
I had in front of me. Yeah, the LG Watch Urbane.
Well, the Urbane is very nice too. Yeah, I like the Urbane. LG did the round one, the Gear R.
Right.
And then HTC is doing soon is doing a watch. They sent out invitations last fall. People went to see it. Did anybody see it? I didn't see it. But
it was the Sony Smartwatch 3 that Dieter Bohn reviewed. That was funny. Not funny, but interesting.
Yeah. I feel like this is it. This is the last 2 months, gentlemen. But then, really, I also feel like at least Android Wear is a mature platform that is very usable. I received a text this morning on my watch and responded to it by talking to my watch, and it was very convenient. And
this is the blessing and the curse of Android. It's for everything, for phones and for watches, that companies who can just use Android. And it's better than what they might come up with their own, but it also means that we won't find any super interesting new technologies.
Right.
That's why I like Pebble, because at least they're doing something different.
Well, I mean, it's there's no coin that has a heads but not a tails. So you can't get the idea of a selection of different case styles, different manufacturers, without having the limit of having a single reference operating system that can't introduce a brand new hardware platform. I don't think it's going to be a long time before we see an Android Wear watch with NFC. At the same time, Apple's doing the exact same thing that you always have to do when you buy an Apple, where if you like it, great. If you don't like it, go away. We don't care.
Here's the Urbane that you were talking about, the video of the Urbane.
Yeah.
And unlike the Moto 360, it's fully round, which was the LGR also. This is pretty, and this is metal. Looks nice.
I don't know if it's, I think it might be white metal and it's plated as opposed to something that costs you one semester of your children's college education.
And note the focus on bands once again, which I think was the smart move on Apple's part.
It's quite pretty. It's also, I'm really in love with the idea of a round LCD screen.
Yeah, me too.
A square screen is not a deal breaker, but you really do have an immediate emotional connection to a watch that looks like the same watch you've been using for years and years and years. And again, there's the Casio G-Shock is a square screen. We've been using square calculator watches since we were in junior high.
Many fashion watches are square.
Mark Newsom's watches are always squared circles.
So I know it's not the end of the world that it's a squared circle.
I think it does create a lot of. I think it creates a lot of design challenges. From a not just from
the round
a round watch does. I mean, for developers and so on and so forth. I think that is the primary argument against a round watch is that it's just a lot harder to develop for.
I don't know. It's also a lot more exciting, especially if you're doing something that's focused on being a watch that has digital features on it. There was that I don't know who started circulating it after the Apple Watch came out. And Apple now has like a little promotional, like here's what the watch faces look like, and here what watch apps look like. Someone said, well, here's why you should never a round smartwatch face looks stupid, and they just superimposed a circle over this user interface that had been designed for a square screen to begin with. And well, what do you know? When you try to cram that into a circle, the edges of the buttons get cut off. But it really is circular interface. Circular screens are a specific alternative that is baked into Android Wear. There are a lot of really cool interfaces that are designed for circles. And also, I think that the idea that Android Wear is based on not here are 5 different ways of inputting into this watch really is here is a button, tap the button or swipe the button. I think it really works very nicely. I just love that the interest that Apple is bringing to this is floating all boats. It is an Apple only game. You're not going to be able to use this watch with any other phone, and there are other phones out there. And that means that people who are getting the attention that everyone is giving to smartwatches now has given these other companies like LG, like Motorola, sort of the guts to say, you know what, yeah, let's get into this game too, because there are going to be a lot of people with money to spend, and we want to be there with an open basket when they start throwing it around.
Apple's making 5 million according to the supply chain. We had a little poll on Twit on Sunday as to how many of those 5 million Apple would sell. You think they'll sell 5 million right away, first weekend?
Yeah.
They'll be constrained.
It'll be constrained. You have to get in line, even with 5 million.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be. I think that I don't know if they'll sell 5 million in the first weekend, but they'll definitely sell 5 million in the first 3 weeks.
Is there any thought that it might be a disappointment? The Apple Watch might be a disappointment that people.
I think it absolutely will be for some people.
But I mean, just that it might be disappointed. Buy on the rumor, sell on the story, right? Isn't that the old adage in the stock market? Are they buying on the rumor now? Will the stock plummet when the watch comes out because, in fact, it will not live up to its hype?
That's what they said about the iPhone and iPad. The iPhone and iPad both had bad reviews. Boring, unimaginative, no features. Where's my MMS? Where's my no apps?
I know.
It's the first generation product, and it's going to have first generation pain. And some people will be happy because they get it earlier than if they waited for a couple of generations. And other people will be content to let it go by and wait until it does everything that they want it to.
Will people just go sight unseen and buy it and not wait to find out if the battery life gets you through a full day or things like that?
Well, I think a lot of them will. I think the first 5 million people to buy it are going to be the people who, because I believe shipments are going to be a little bit constrained, those are going to be people who fought to get one of these things. So those aren't just early adopters. Those are early believers.
Yeah.
So they are the sort of people like all of us who used the first iPhone that doesn't have cut, copy, paste, doesn't have apps. I don't care because this speaks to me in a very, very fundamental level, and I'm willing to limp along with it for a year and a half until they fix these things.
Max Texan in our chat room says 200 million Apple Watch compatible devices are out there right now. That's 5Cs, 5Ss, 6s.
Yep.
If he points out, if only a couple of percentage points of them buy it, you've sold out the 5 million.
And it gives people in the US, for example, who have iPhone 5C or iPhone 5 or iPhone 5S a gateway to Apple Pay, which previously only had an iPhone 6.
Gateway to Apple Pay.
Yeah, because you can authorize the watch, and the watch has NFC and can do the transactions for you. So if you've been thinking about upgrading, but you don't want to just yet, but all the stores you use have Apple Pay, it's just another added bonus for you. It
is a little ironic that Apple was the last company to put an NFC chip in its smartphone and the first company to put an NFC chip in a watch.
Well, because they don't think about chipsets, they think about feature sets, and the Apple Pay to them is a feature, and then they'll put the chip in that helps them deliver that feature. Yeah.
So we agree that they'll probably. I feel like there is a strong potential, not huge, but there's a potential that people will look at the reviews, say, oh, but wait, it doesn't do this, that, or the other. It doesn't have good battery life, whatever it is, and it could
flash.
It could slow down sales a little bit, but I think there's just enough. There's enough people who would they'll sell out 5 million in the week.
Well, and I think also I think there's 5 million people that just want to be the first ones with the watch. That want. Yes. I mean, it is anytime you're the first one with an Apple product, you tend to be, and sometimes with a Google product, you tend to be brought up in a conversation, and some people want to be part of that. So I think that there's enough people that just want to do that you're going to get.
And the rest will wait for the third generation.
Yeah, I think. I'd say that in the first quarter, I could see that a supply of 8 to 9 million that would want to buy the watch, and then after that, it could slow down a lot without a lot of technological, without new apps. And there are so many apps that could be written, and it's just a matter of how fast they, how fast those customizations happen will heavily affect it.
That's absolutely right. I think the selling point of this is not even necessarily going to be Apple. It's going to be all the apps that get written for it. Mm-hmm. And already we're seeing developers show off screenshots of how they're thinking about adapting things to Apple Watch. That's going to be the excitement that's going to get the Apple Watch into month 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And also the fact that, and this is something that I only learned after wearing this Android Wear watch, it's a cool watch. That even if it just did basic notifications, I like the fact that you have designers who are making beautiful watch faces that I actually enjoy using and can actually switch out for the weekend if I want to. Now, if I'm kind of now concerned about what the pipes in my house are going to do, now I've got my watch face as a weather-dominated watch face. Just as a watch that does nothing but tell time in interesting ways, that's a good $200 for worth of value for a lot of people. And once there's some guy or some woman in every office who has one that gets to show it off to people, it's going to be the same effect as, we were probably all at some point the one person that someone knows who has an iPhone, the one person that someone knows who has an iPad. And I still remember when I showed off my iPad to Roger Ebert for the first time, it was just, let me play with this, let me play with that, let me draw on it, let me. And that's, I was selling so many that first week when I was at a conference, when I was the only person at this conference with an iPad.
I do also think that Apple's been very smart, and I'm not sure I support this, but they've been very smart in creating a closed ecosystem. You see it with messages, that there's a real strong incentive if your friends have iPhones, that you get an iPhone so that you can communicate using messages rather than SMS. And,
I know the one.
And I think you sell one Apple Watch, you're going to sell two, because there's going to be one other, Lisa has to buy an Apple Watch. Picture, right, Leo? Yeah, Lisa has to buy an Apple Watch. Otherwise, half of the functionality, the drawing little
She won't get your heartbeat, Leo.
She won't get my heartbeat. So this is smart marketing. No, but this is smart marketing.
Oh my God! If that goes into a commercial where Apple, my spouse can't, my love can't speak my heartbeat, I have to have this watch. Oh no, she has a different watch. She can't feel my heartbeat.
It's one of those things that's absolutely self-serving, but at the same time, if you aren't willing to do that, then you don't there's no common standard for sending heartbeats over standardized protocols for internet communication.
Right.
So you
they had to invent it. But they didn't have to make the Apple Watch iPhone only.
Well, but the closed system gives Apple, beyond
brilliant marketing.
Beyond the obvious business, it also allows them to innovate much faster because they're not having to deal with standards. They don't have to deal with outside, folks and trying to figure out how we're going to all talk together. They just do it, and so they're able to move faster than, in the areas that they want to because they have that closed system.
It's like the iPhone with Linux. It worked on Mac, it worked on PC because it had to, but it never really worked on Linux because it was tethered to a cable. Now it doesn't have that tether anymore, so you can theoretically use it with any computer you want. The Apple Watch right now, because of energy constraints and other reasons, is incredibly tethered to an iPhone, and making something that would have that deep integration into Android is not only not in Apple's best interest, but it's not in their expertise or skill set. So they can make a watch that is basically a little extension, a little broadcast from the iPhone. But as time goes on and it gets more radios and more independence of its own, it'll probably work with any system that you have.
I'm 100% in agreement. I don't even blame Apple for not showing any interest whatsoever in supporting other phones, because why would they? Not only would they have to build an entire new team that they really don't have right now, but also they'd have to support a platform that is really hard to support in this way. It would really only work with the latest two versions of Android, which is a fraction of the installed base out there. And as you say, why are you helping for people to decide to buy an Android instead of buying an iPhone? This is what they do so well. Also, so much of the technology behind Apple Watch are technologies that are built into Yosemite, that are built into iOS, and to replicate that experience, to create analogs for Android for that, again, you're just there's an analogy that I really like. It's sometimes you're building a car with square wheels. And isn't it all bumpy? Well, we've invented this brand new suspension so that it goes as well as square wheels. Well, but weren't the tires like wear unevenly? Well, we've come up with this new kind of rubber, and like, okay, look at all the stuff you're doing just to make square wheels work. Maybe you should just have made round wheels to begin with. And I think that square wheels is Android support for Apple Watch.
Well, and it's interesting. Hold on a second. Some great comments in the chat room I want to throw in there, and then we'll continue. You're next, Alex. Somebody points out that while Apple Watch, even if Apple Watch didn't do well in North America, let's not forget Apple now works in a giant global market, and in Asia, this might be a huge product. We don't even know how well it might do. Dr. Mom says, this is an interesting point, if they make it a closed ecosystem and it's a medical accessory, then you have an ethical conundrum because you're restricting potentially life-saving tech to only people who can afford it. I don't know if that's...
there's a counterpoint to that. Like I interviewed the school in Redwood that is using iPads with children with cochlear implants for training, and they weren't allowed to use Skype because Stanford and HIPAA didn't consider it securely encrypted end-to-end, but FaceTime is securely encrypted end-to-end, so that fit with the health guidelines, and that allowed them to have one product that did everything. I don't know if it's the same, but Apple doing the whole thing can also make it better for some things like HIPAA. And
boy, I might argue that why do you not think Skype is safe and you think FaceTime is? That's a strange...
Apple maintains that FaceTime is end-to-end encrypted, and their security papers. And Steve Gibson went through all that. Skype will tell you that that they're working on it, but it's not done yet.
Skype's encrypted. Skype's encrypted. It's always been encrypted. That's a bizarre point of view, I have to say. But
if you ask Skype, they can't give you the end-to-end encrypted line that Apple can give you for their protocol. Okay. And there's a lot of access that they've given that might not continue in the future.
And I love Curtis B's comment. Once Apple integrates the Apple Watch with CarPlay and the new Apple Car, then your spouse will be able to feel you revving the engine. Now that I would buy it for.
Is that a double entendre?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alex. I just wanted to get some because the chat room is great today.
All I was saying is that with standardization, Apple's their general mode of operation is that they look for standards in areas that they're behind, and they look at closed systems in areas that they're ahead, and that's what we can generally expect from Apple at any moment. I think that the thing that's going to be interesting is that we are going to see a single operating system in a lot of watches very, very quickly after this is released. And the hard part that other developers are going to have is that once one company like Apple has 5, 6, 10 million people using it, while we've seen a lot of other watches be made, they're all in small numbers. Once they get to that big, the entire ecosystem, like everything else that Apple has, it's not just what Apple's doing. It's all the developers and in all the different ways that they can interact with that watch suddenly become commercially viable. Yeah. And that'll pick up, and then it's typically what'll happen is it'll pick up to support Apple. But once they start making money with Apple, if the other watches are picking up, then they will go after those markets as well because they've already developed the infrastructure. But it's hard when there's only 100,000 or 500,000 people using your product to know that you're only going to get 1% of that product. Is that going to be enough to generate, a factory run? At 10 million, it becomes more viable.
Leo, I just double-checked this quickly. So Skype, this is according to Wikipedia, Skype is not considered to be a secure VoIP system, and the calls made over the network are routinely monitored by Microsoft and by government agencies. So that doesn't fit the HIPAA.
That's Wikipedia. I don't. Protocol. Yeah. Skype's always used encryption, and the presumption is that Microsoft is breaking it, which might be, but I don't understand why you'd presume that and not presume Apple's doing the same thing. I think that's more of a political point of view than a technical point of view, is my point. Maybe it is. I mean, FaceTime is, you put just as much trust in Apple with FaceTime as you do in Microsoft with Skype, don't you?
Sure, but I think that I think the same information about Skype's encryption is different than the publicly available information about FaceTime's encryption.
Okay. It still feels like an opinion to me. You know what? I'm actually, let's ask Steve Gibson on Wednesday.
Yep.
Tuesday. He's today. It's right after the show. Steve's watching even, because I know he likes to watch this show. Let's take a break. We'll come back with more in just a second. Are you a Sonic Youth fan? I feel like Alex Lindsay might be a Sonic Youth fan.
I saw them a long time ago.
And the reason I asked, Kim Gordon's new memoir is just out, Girl in a Band. Now, I am not. I don't even know who Sonic Youth is, but I figure if you are into Sonic Youth, you're going to want to listen to this on Audible.com.
I'll be adding that, Leo.
Yeah. Okay. So
sure.
there you go. And she narrates it
like right down my alley.
Really. You're a Sonic Youth fan too.
I wasn't like a uber fan, but I just love these kinds of memoirs, like the rock bios and all that kind of stuff. I love them.
You know, Keith Richards, Neil Young's, Pete Townsend's. I love them. I agree with you.
The couple everyone believed was golden and normal and eternally intact, who gave younger musicians hope they could outlast a crazy rock and roll world, was now just another cliche of middle-aged relationships.
I think when you're listening to a memoir like this, it's so great when the author is reading it. Kim Gordon does read this. Now, you could get this book for free, but let's not stop here. There are, after all, 150,000 titles on Audible. And by the way, when you become an Audible member, there are always daily deals like this one. The Prince by Machiavelli, it's not very long. It'd be hard for them to charge a lot for a 4-hour, 47-minute gift, but they're doing a daily deal on this for $2. Grover Gardner, who reads, is one of my favorite narrators. Not in Italian, okay, but still an audio classic. Here's Grover Gardner with a little Machiavelli. If you haven't read this,
a mere recapitulation of a few of his transactions with the statesmen and soldiers of his time gives a fair indication of his activities.
I have to say, so this is something else that happens with Audible. You become a fan of not just the author, but the reader. Grover Gardner does The Stand. OMG. 47 hours of Grover Gardner. You might say, what? That's heaven to me. This is such a great narration. And if that's not long enough, how about Grover Gardner reading The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich? 57 hours. That is a book that'll keep you busy all summer.
That's a lot of rising and a lot of falling, man.
You know, I actually read this in middle school. I was so fascinated by the history of World War II. I read this. There's a lot of skimming because William L. Shirer, who wrote it, includes a lot of the original documents, and you can just skim through all those telegrams. But it is actually really good. And if you're a fan, if you're interested at all in history of World War II, this is the definitive story of the Nazi era. But this is so history, yeah, classics, yeah, but great fiction too. I mean, Audible. If you're into sci-fi, Audible is phenomenal. If you haven't read 50 Shades of Grey yet, or Gone Girl, I've been listening to American Sniper. Chris Kyle's. I had mixed feelings about the book, so I wanted to. I mean, the movie, so I wanted to read the book. If you've seen the movie, you must read the book. All of this is just fantastic. If you saw Unbroken, Laura Hillenbrand's amazing story that was made into that movie is incredible. A must-read. I can go on and on. Andy, what are you listening to at audible.com?
Neil Gaiman has a new book of short stories out called Trigger Warning. I cannot tell you whether I like these short stories or not, because I'm sure they're great. Because Neil Gaiman, any audiobook, Neil Gaiman wrote it, and Neil Gaiman is reading the book, automatic purchase.
Yeah.
Just, he's money in the bank. He's like Gene Hackman in the credits of a movie. You're just going to have to see that because it's going to be great.
There are times you don't want the author to narrate it. Not all authors are great readers. There's no one better than it. Listen to Neil Gaiman.
That might disturb them or shake them or make them think something they had never thought before. I felt that was their own lookout. We are mature. We decide what we read.
He is an actor.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
He's one of those writers who read every single book in the library as a kid. He understands every single story, and when you have an author reading their own work, you have an understanding of that story that you can't get elsewhere. And the other great thing about this is that you've just recommended a book that takes 54 hours to get through. Yeah. This is a collection of short stories, so you can parcel one out for, okay, remember how we're going to my aunt's house like in 2 weeks, and that's going to be a 90-minute drive. Here's a drive to the aunt's house story. Here is a trying to spend 3 hours cleaning out that closet story. It's just again, money in the bank.
If you are a Neil Gaiman fan and you haven't listened to the full cast production of American Gods, just do. Don't even, just do. His narration of Neverwhere, there are actually 2 versions of Neverwhere on Audible. Get Neil Gaiman's reading of Neverwhere, just do. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Did you read his last novel, The Ocean at the End of the Lane?
That's probably my favorite of all of his novels. I made the mistake. I love his shorter novels because I can get like a 6-hour project done. Like I hate cleaning and I hate doing things like a home repair. I have to build something, but that'll get you right through it. And it took the job took me like 2 hours longer because I was stopping to just imagine me in the middle of the kitchen with a mop in my hand with like all the drawers empty, but just standing there just.
We are really fans. But again, if you're not, there is plenty more to choose from. So here's the deal. I want you to go to audible.com/MacBreak. You're going to sign up for the Gold account. That's a book a month. Your first month is free, so you have 30 days to pick a book. You'll also get the Daily Digest of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. The book you pick is yours to keep, regardless of whether you stick around or not. If you quit in the first 30 days, you pay nothing, but you still get the book. But I got to tell you, you're never going to quit. And so I just warn you this. Andy, in my experience, is and I know Alex listens. I know you all listen.
Right now I'm working through one called Money, a Biography, which is actually pretty fascinating.
Awesome.
It's really, really good. It just really changes the way you think of currency. It's not really about making money. It's about just how money is thought of. And that's the one I'm kind of in the middle of right now. But I'm on a subscription and I always forget. And then I go up there and I go, I got a whole bunch of points, and I buy like 5 or 6 books before every trip.
Isn't that nice?
It's great.
I've got 2 credits available. I always love having 2 credits. The other thing they do, I just want to throw this in. This is a freebie. They now have the great courses, which means you can get college courses. This was a very expensive subscription. I used to get the great courses. It's now part of your Audible subscription. So if you're interested in almost anything they teach in college, including this one, a 12-lecture masterpiece of scientific reporting, the Higgs boson and beyond. Professor Sean Carroll at the California Institute of Technology gives this lecture. I mean, learning, entertainment. I mean, it's Audible. Audible.com/MacBreak. It's just so great. I can't.
I have a subscription. My mom, my sister have a subscription. They just listen to it all the time. The whole family can enjoy it.
I love these great courses. There's just so much. History's greatest voyages of exploration. Wow.
I have Hulu. I subscribe to Hulu and Netflix. If I ever really needed to economize, I would have to keep Audible and delete one of those 2. Yeah. It was
audible.com/MacBreak. All right, back to the news. Sorry. I know we do like 8-minute commercials for Audible.
Exactly. It turns into like we have to talk about books that we love and authors that we love and performances that we love. It's like
what can I say?
I'm sorry. Like we get an advertiser of like cable clamps. I'm sorry, we just don't have 8 minutes. We'll read the copy. We don't have 8 minutes of things to say about your cable clamp. It's a great clamp, but that's all we have.
Is that going to be your pick of the week? I have a feeling.
Oh damn! I just blew it.
So let's talk about car because this is we're going to start seeing CarPlay stuff soon, right? And Android, same thing. Google really wants Android in the car. Not necessarily mutually exclusive, but this is a good article in the New York Times this week by Aaron Kessler and Brian X. Chen. Apple has 200 people working on electric vehicle technology. We've been talking about that. Google, of course, working, as we've known for years, on autonomous vehicles. For some reason, though, it's the CarPlay or the Android Auto that's really going to be the beginning.
Well, both of these sit on top of QNX. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, QNX was the easiest one to layer them on top of.
Right. So I think that it sounds like the big winner in some ways is BlackBerry of all things, because
they own QNX. They bought them.
Yeah, so QNX, so BlackBerry sits on top of QNX, and so whether you're using Android or iOS, and I think it does give Apple, or not Apple, but the car manufacturers a kind of middle ground so they could switch if they needed to, and they're not committing to one or the other.
What?
It's also, I forget it. I was talking to Sam Abulsamid, who was the guy from GM who was doing a lot of their car tech stuff, and he was pointing out that the autonomous stuff and the automatic stuff sounds great, but it's way in the future. Right now, if you have rain or snow or something, those cars are completely flummoxed. But so it's a beautiful dream. But the stuff like CarPlay and Android Auto are the present. They're much more. They're going to be what we use for a long time to come before we get to.
We talked for a long time about Ford Sync. That was a big advertiser for a couple of years on the network. That was based on Microsoft Car. Ford this year has abandoned Microsoft Car, and they're now doing QNX with both Android Auto and CarPlay available by the end of 2016.
It's a great Canadian embedded real-time operating system.
Do you have to have QNX to do CarPlay and Auto?
No, it's just super easy. To surface the stuff that you need. So the CarPlay and Android Auto have to interface with the in-car entertainment system, and QNX made that super easy to do. I'm sure embedded Android, embedded Linux can do it as well. But the QNX team was very good to work with, and it was a very quick process for them to do. And a lot of cars already use them, so it was advantageous to everybody.
It is also the case that people complain about, for instance, Ford Sync, especially my Ford Touch, which was a user interface layer on top of it, that people just said, it's too complicated, we can't figure it out. Ford basically acknowledged it, did an update, people still complained. So it makes sense to say, well, let's take a step back, and why not let the UI be determined by something people already understand, their phone, and by two companies that really know how to make UI. Siri, of course, is much better than anything.
Can you call Toyota and tell them that, Leo? You just give.
What do they do? What does Toyota do?
They were saying they were going to do CarPlay and they were going to do Android Auto, and then they gave the New York Times a quote saying that they're not going to do that now. That they believe that the future is in their proprietary interface.
Wow.
They might revisit it in the future. They're still talking to Google and Apple, but not soon.
And I think for the most part, a lot of these manufacturers, whether it's camera manufacturers or auto manufacturers, a lot of them are, they think that the secret sauce to what they're selling is the interface, how you're interfacing with your Canon or your Nikon or your car. And they're generally, in my opinion, wrong because I think it's one of those things that they really should stay out of that and focus on the other parts that they provide in that area.
Do you have voice in your car, Alex? Do you have voice recognition in your car?
I have old cars.
You don't even have any of this stuff.
My wife in her. No, I have like this old Ford Explorer that I drive around in Pennsylvania, and then I got my older
what does
Beamer.
Carlita have? That's right. You have old cars. Yeah.
Carlita has a CRV, and she can ask the car for directions, and then it pops up this absolutely horrid looking interface of how to get there. And I won't use it.
My very fancy Audi, terrible voice recognition. And the voice coming back sounds drunk every time. It just sounds drunk. It's terrible. And yet this is Audi state-of-the-art car electronics, but they couldn't do that part right. How about you, Rene? What do you have in your car?
I bought an all-wheel drive Toyota the year before they got any sort of real integration, and I asked them if I could upgrade it, and they said no, I have to buy a new car. And I was waiting until they had a CarPlay version, but in light of their recent comments, I'm going to be cross-shopping now. But the next car I buy is definitely going to have it, and it's definitely going to be compatible with both our.
And I think Toyota's going to learn that lesson, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I think that more
Texas
people are
says
looking.
He has Siri in his BMW, early adopter, I guess, and he says it's truly the first hands-free experience. He's really apparently a fan.
I would like to fit in offline mode because I don't ever want to be driving between cities and suddenly have my voice control or my navigation stop. So I think it behooves them to get more offline things going. But I think in general, it's a great idea.
And that's one of the reasons probably the car recognition, voice recognition isn't great, is because it is offline. It is in the car, right? It's not the new stuff won't be, but in my Audi, it's the car doing the thing.
Nearline would be best, like online whenever it's available, and then shunt back to local when it's not available.
Andy, you probably drive a 63. I'm thinking. I'm thinking that maybe
if this were a movie, you would look at my car and think, "There goes the last honest cop in a corrupt town."
Do you have a Jeff Williams car, Andy? Do you have a Jeff Williams car?
I'm very, very proud that I have a car that it reached 175,000 miles. It is running like a top, and I'm trying to get it to 200 because I would be proud as hell if I made it. That's an indication of good, safe driving.
Those Crown Vics just never die, do they?
It's not a Crown Vic, but it is a fleet vehicle. This is why I like fleet vehicles. They are designed so that they run forever. They're easy to maintain. I love them. But every time I'm in like a rental car, I can never get used to that screen in the center dash. I have a permanently mounted RAM mount holder for my phone, and I've installed it like at the same level as my side view mirror. I can just sort of flick my eyes toward it to get like navigation information. Every time the screen is like over here on a rental car, I have to go like. And I feel like I'm just not
so dangerous.
It's just not a smart thing to do.
What Andy did, by the way, is fall over sideways to read his dash.
Exactly.
It's so dangerous.
Radios.
And that's really a lot of this. The feds do have guidelines, but I think it's not going to be too long, given the hazards of distracted driving, before these guidelines become rules. for how this stuff works. And really, voice recognition is the key to this, I think.
And
I think it's also pushing the demand up for self-driving cars, because as you start saying that we can't do that, then people get, very. I think that's really creating a situation where people really want to not drive their car anymore. And I think that the regulations are important. I do think people should not be doing so much with their phone in the car. But I also think that it is it really starts a cascade that probably is not good for the car industry in the long run, because people will first stop self-driving cars, and once they have self-driving cars, they won't want to own them. And then they'll just want to rent them, and before you know it, you have a much smaller demand for cars.
That's why some people have said to Ford, "Why are you interested in this? This is going to cut your sales dramatically."
But it's better for, I remember commuting to work for a decade, and it was an hour-and-a-half commute, and I would see people reading newspapers on their steering wheels,
terrible.
Eating with two hands. So the distraction thing is real, but the electronics haven't fixed it. They've made it either the same or worse. Right. My colleague Georgia had the same problem I had. I rent a car, I go in there, you plug in your phone, all you want to do is use your Apple Maps or your Google Maps, but they start playing your iPod music, and you try to turn it off, and it turns off the voice navigate. And it's so poorly integrated. But if I could just land at an airport, get in a car, and it has Android Auto or it has CarPlay in it, and I have my apps, I can press Overcast, listen to my podcast, press the Maps button, listen to my navigation, not have to worry about that. That to me is a huge win. In Alex's beautiful self-driving future, I'll get into the next self-driving car and it'll just have my interface, and I won't have to worry about it.
That'd be nice. Dagomar makes a good point. He says,
basically, you're proposing a Google Chrome car, where it just connects to the cloud. It instantly becomes your car as soon as you sign into your Google account. I would be interested in a car like that.
I like that. Dagomar is saying in our chat room that only 19 states left allow windshield mounts. So that whole aftermarket thing of mounting a GPS with a suction cup to your windshield, that's gone. That's going fast.
I put mine on the. They have these little ones that pin to your exhaust, your heating element, and they just kind of stick into it, and you just wedge it in there, and then you can set your phone on it. So it keeps it below the dash.
I've recommended RAM mounts as pick of the week at least twice. Can't say enough about them. And twice now I have upgraded I've had this car for a long time, so twice now I've upgraded my phone. Did not have to unscrew this thing from the dash. You just pay $20 for the thing at the end of the arm. You disconnect and put a new one in. And can't recommend those mounts highly enough.
Wait, which magnets?
They're called RAM mount, RAM hyphen mount. And even when I even have a mount for like an iPad Mini or a Nexus 7 tablet. It will, whatever you've got, you can mount it to like this system. Whether you have to mount it to the floor, mount it to the dash, you want to switch to a suction cup mount. It's all modular. So I have done like time lapse videos of the Northeast Corridor Amtrak ride from Boston to New York. Because I happen to have this, I just suction cup mounted the camera to the side of the window and have this. It's actually on YouTube somewhere. I'll see if I can find it.
Doing it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, the typing that you're hearing right now is me ordering
a RAM mount. So you can basically put this anywhere. It's not in the windshield. It can be in the windshield, but you can put it anywhere.
Well, it's a whole system. It has little ball mounts.
Wait, here it is.
We're looking at it on the YouTube.
I'm giving you.
It's a ball and socket, huh? This is hardcore. This is like we use in the studio,
or whatever you want. I actually had a suction cup mounted for the first couple of years until I got tired of having to remove it every time that I want to order drive-through, and so that's when I said. That's why I said, okay, guess what? We're drilling holes in the dashboard.
And he doesn't mess around.
Well, that's the beauty of those Lincoln Town cars. You could really pretty much do anything you want. Look at this thing. This is hardcore.
That was my old style.
Here he is, beloved technology pundit Ihnatko, with his camera glued to the train window. That's nice.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That's not RAM mount, but I've done it like that differently. I think that comes out a little bit. That's the idea.
And then somebody in our chat room was recommending this aftermarket solution from Pioneer, the AVH X4600 BT, which does support Siri. So you can do Siri eyes free with iPhone 4S or later. And this is obviously you'd have to mount
Pioneer and Parrot both have some good CarPlay aftermarket units, as long as your car can take the double size units.
It does say that there are some issues, I think, with iOS 8.
There's new ones that have full CarPlay support.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, they say don't upgrade. That's a bad sign.
That's why it's kind of weird. For the next year, maybe even 2, it's going to be profoundly disappointed to either buy a car with CarPlay or Google Car systems built in, or buy a new head that supports that, and then find out that, well, I don't have many apps that actually work with it, and it doesn't actually interface as cleanly as I would like.
Yeah.
There are times where I would much rather have a headphone jack that plugs into the phone, which means that as soon as I do that, I have audio, as opposed to the Bluetooth, which works 70% of the time, or maybe 70 times out of 75, but those 5 times where it does not connect and I have to manually pair it, it's like, oh, damn it.
And then incoherent drivel in the chat room says he has nice handle, the Alpine ILX 007. And also a nice handle.
License to thrill.
Yeah. Is that their slogan?
No, it should be, though.
It should be. Let me take a look at this one. He says he likes this from Alpine. Alpine does do good stuff. I like their aftermarket stuff. And look how flush that is if you have the right...
that looks cool.
The right hole in your car. And this is a CarPlay solution for $800. So this is an aftermarket CarPlay solution. That's kind of neat.
I think if you can't get a dashboard skin that makes it look like the time controls from the DeLorean, I'm not going to buy this deck. This is just this is a missed opportunity. This is money left on the table.
Yeah.
Jason Snell had a review of one of them, and he said it was part of the way there, not all the way there yet, but it makes me feel happy about the future.
Hey, $800 is better than buying a new car.
That's about the value of my car.
No, Andy, the value of your car is priceless.
Oh yeah, I forgot I did buy that new water pump. It's worth about $1,100.
But do you have to then have a hole in your dashboard of exactly 178 by 100 by 75.5 millimeters?
Like my car won't take it. Like
right.
You just can't put an aftermarket in there.
Right.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
I bet Exhibit could get one in there. You'd probably take out your airbag to make it fit, but it would be.
I'm going to get a magnet mount and put an Apple Watch on my dashboard. That's what I'm going to do. Show everybody.
That's good, because you're going to need to charge it up on your way to the office.
Airbag, CarPlay, airbag, CarPlay. I think I'd choose CarPlay. Airbag.
So long as they make the knobs into little spikes so that if you do get in a crash, it will be over quickly.
Yeah, pointy little spikes. That'd be good. Apple is overhauling the Genius Bar, perhaps one of the most successful retail features of all time. They're going to change things a little bit, but this is from Mark Gurman, 16 hours and 48 minutes ago. That's a good way.
You look so happy in that picture.
Hi. Apple's soon, according to Mark, going to make significant changes to the Genius Bar appointments to improve customer experience. This will happen March 9th. The new concierge will replace traditional walk-in Genius Bar appointments. Customers seeking Genius Bar assistance can walk into an Apple retail store. You'll meet up with a check-in assistant. This is currently what happens. And you'll get a specific time to return for an appointment. Don't we get that already?
That's what's happening now. And
okay,
what's changing?
The new program, which is this is an Angela Arendt's special. Instead, the customer describes the issue to an Apple Store employee who inputs the issue into an updated iPad app using a special algorithm. Working. The application provides
algorithms.
It's iPhone actuarial work.
I was watching Jeopardy the other night, and algorithm was an answer. What is algorithm, Alex?
What is algorithm for 500 shot back?
It is not the same as logarithm.
Algorithm, Alex.
Hard to drive.
Okay, stop. Using a special algorithm, the application provides the customer a wait time based on issue priorities. They're going to do triage in the lobby. A customer seeking an iPhone screen replacement will be higher in the queue than a customer seeking help with a minor iCloud issue. Then you provide a phone number, and Apple will send you 3 text messages with updates to the wait time. First, an initial text message that says you got an appointment, or not you got an appointment, we've got your request, and the wait time is. The second message will say, start heading back to the Apple Store. The third message says tells you when your technician is ready and where they are. That's a big change.
I hope this is true. This is exactly the sort of thing that the Apple that I know and love would do, because you walk into an Apple store, you see it often just packed with people milling about, waiting to see the genius. This is not just a way to triage people; it's a way to encourage them to go. There's an orange Julius here. That's a very frosty, refreshing beverage. Why don't you leave our store and wait there instead? It'll ease up congestion. It will let more people, mungle around expensive hardware than just turning into a big waiting salon. And
I know.
who would not rather wait whatever they want within the vicinity of a mile of the mall, as opposed to having to hang around and play Angry Birds yet again on an iPad.
The good news is that if you can still do the I'm online, I'm going to schedule an appointment and get an actual time.
Yeah.
So that, I think this way they handle both, because I don't want the uncertainty. So I like the idea of people going online and say, we'll see you at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And that's good. I know I'm going to see them. And they're usually pretty good that way.
Yeah, and I know that in San Francisco, you got very well trained to never try to show up at the Apple store unannounced. I mean, if you want someone to look at something.
Absolutely.
It was like an hour and a half that you were going to sit there. But even now, given that every Apple store is near a shopping area, I was talking to Carlita about this morning, and she was just like, "Oh, this would fix everything." But for her, because she doesn't want to she never goes in to fix her phone because she doesn't have an hour to just sit around, and she never knows exactly when she's going to show up. So the idea that she could go do that and then go run some errands nearby and pick other things up and then come back is a huge upgrade for the experience.
It does worry me, though, that my problem will be triaged as a lower priority than somebody else's problem. To you, your problem is the most important problem.
It's like that horrible thing of when you go to the emergency room, always say chest pains, right? Because that'll get you right through.
Right.
You'll always have to say screen break. You can't see it, but it's a screen break.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't smile with the left side of my face anymore. Is that bad?
No,
while I'm here, like I've got this insurance where they just approve every single test. So I'm never out of here in less than 3 days. It's just weird.
And just walk into an emergency room and say, I feel like there's a knot in my chest and I'm having trouble feeling my left arm. And you don't even have to fill out paperwork.
How about if I just say, I can't breathe?
Yeah.
Ever since Michael
they'll
Keaton
thump you on the chest
got
and
snubbed by the Oscars, I've just had this burning hole in my chest.
But what happens if you do that and then really all it is you've got a sore thumb? Are they going to throw you out?
They'll bill you for the cardio procedure.
No, you don't want to do it. If you have a sore thumb, you don't want to do it because they pump you up with all kinds of drugs and make you stay overnight.
Yeah.
So
they have barium sticks to fix that later.
Oh, God. They do have ways, don't they? Well, let's say you want to get to the top of the list in the Apple Store. What would be the what would...
Well, the first step is to crack your screen.
Apparently.
just knock it down. And then walk in and say screen, and then while they're replacing your screen, say, I'm having an iCloud problem.
Yeah.
Too,
Insignificant iCloud
incidentally.
issue.
Yeah. Apple is going to do an interesting thing. At least this is the rumor, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, confirmation or denial. They're going to do a public beta for 8.3 starting March, and then for iOS 9 in the summer. True? I guess they did the public beta with Yosemite, and I thought that worked quite well.
They had a developer beta on WWDC last year where they included a bug reporter app, and they got something like 100,000 bug reports the first weekend, and the screeners were just swamped, and a lot of them apparently were just like random characters input in and sent to Apple. So it makes sense to me that if they do this, it's going to be limited the way Mark says. I think he said,
he says it'll be limited to 100,000 people.
Yeah, 100,000. So that's limited, and hopefully there'll be a lot of pre-screening involved, because the last thing that I want is 3 billion bug reports coming in that do nothing but slow down and clog up the system. But it is useful. No plan survives contact with the outside world. So the sooner you can get that outside world involved, the better you can arguably make the software. It just depends on whether you have the resources to screen it and then act effectively to triage it and figure out how to make it better going forward.
Is iOS 9, codename Monarch, is that for the next generation iPhone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll see that at WWDC in June, and then we'll see it on the phones.
So public beta of that doesn't make a huge amount of sense because it's going to run on new hardware. I guess you still have to test it for the older stuff.
Well, it'll be the same as the developer previews. They're just basically opening up the developer previews to public seeds, exactly like they did with Yosemite. So they'll have WWDC, they'll announce it, there'll be a developer beta, and then sometime after that, there'll be a public seed beta. where 100,000 people can get on and test it out.
I think that's a good idea. Microsoft's doing the same thing with Windows 10, and I think that's a very good idea. Not merely to find bugs, but to get feedback on features.
The biggest problem is how well Apple manages it. So, for example, let's say I'm one of those 100,000 people and I download the beta, and then like right now I'm running iOS 8.3. It's either 8.2 and 8.3 are both in beta, and under 8.3, some of my apps crash immediately, and some of them behave weirdly. And I would hope that Apple doesn't let me go to the store and leave a negative review for a developer whose app works perfectly fine on release software, but doesn't work under the latest beta that I installed 3 minutes ago. So it's just I think it's a great benefit, but I hope that there's checks put in place to make sure that nothing goes awry.
And I do think it's important. I think that Apple has had a lot of false starts with the first time. I've learned not to update I definitely don't set it to auto update, and I have a tendency to wait a little bit to just see what phones it bricks and what things it breaks. And so I think getting it out in front of a lot of people early will hopefully reduce some of that pain for the early adopters when it's actually released.
They have learned, though. I mean, like the 8.3 beta that went out yesterday, when it was available to install over iTunes first for a long time, it didn't go OTA. And that, it might be in recognition of previous OTAs not being as easy.
I'd really like to see Apple move towards the example of Microsoft, where they're not very, very coy about new releases. They say, not only, this is not just a developer release. If you really want to fly commando style, by all means, users, install this and use it and talk about it. And that's where and you will often find that what they show off in January is nowhere close to what they ship in October. And if we get to see a lot of that, some of that from Apple, and saying that it is not the end of the world if we allow ordinary people to use our operating system before it's completely finished. I don't think that it would go so far as to allow people to really have an influence on design, because I think they're emphatically a company that says that we're not doing our jobs as designers if we are letting you tell us how this thing should look and work. That was one of the keynote pull quotes from Johnny Ive's piece in the New Yorker last week. He was complaining about, he didn't mention Motorola specifically, but he was speaking about how other makers will have a piece of software that lets you design the case, choose the colors, choose the trim color, and I feel as though this is abdicating your responsibility as a designer to simply let people have whatever they want instead of using your skills as a designer to put something together. That's why I don't think that if Apple used this sort of system with Yosemite, we would still get the same fonts, we'd still get the same transparency. Maybe they would change the level and the intensity of transparency, and maybe they would put in options to tone that stuff down. But it's good to see them have at least of awareness of what problems people are going to encounter when they actually ship it to tens of millions of people.
Let's take a break. When we come back, more from MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, the Chicago Sun-Times. Alex Lindsay, the Pittsburgh Penguins. No, he's with the Pixel Corps.
I think we're all penguins on this.
We're all penguins on this, except for me. I'm sitting in the sun, enjoying the beautiful weather. I'm wearing shorts. And Rene, Ritchie in Montreal with imore.com. Our sponsor of the hour is Personal Capital. Personal Capital. It's a new year. It's time to start investing smarter. Personal Capital is an easy way for you to do it, and a special offer for Twit listeners. I was just looking at and I love this. The dashboard I get from my Personal Capital account is so great. I'm just looking at my portfolio here at this point, seeing what my holdings are, what my balances are, performance. You can look at your allocation. You can rebalance. You can learn so much about what your investment's doing, this is such a great solution. Personal Capital gives you a dashboard. Look, I made $99 this month. That's fabulous. Portfolio balances, portfolio allocation. And all of this is free and easy to set up when you go to personalcapital.com/MacBreak. Now, it's just not just investing. It really gives you information about your entire financial life. It's good for budgeting, good for planning. And if you want to use Personal Capital's incredible registered investments advisors, you don't have to. But if you want to, you can open a new Personal Capital account, and they're going to give you $100 for every $100,000 you deposit, up to $10,000. It's a win-win. You get it cash in your account, and you get great personalized investment advice. Schedule your free one-on-one investment consultation today. This is a limited-time offer. Don't wait. With their award-winning financial app, you can monitor your income spending and the performance of your investments in real time on a single, easy-to-read screen. You can find and eliminate things like high mutual fund and 401k fees, other hidden brokerage fees. It could be shaving years off your retirement. And all of that's free. Total clarity and transparency. Personalcapital.com/MacBreak. Manage your portfolio like a pro. Very easy to set up. You take control of your finances for 2015. Yes, they have iOS and Android apps. They even have an Android watch app that is spectacular. I love getting this information fed to my watch. Go to Personal Capital now, set up your free account, and for a limited time, if you qualify, Personal Capital will give you $100 for every $100,000 you deposit, up to $10,000. Personalcapital.com/MacBreak. Personalcapital.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support. Appreciate that, Personal Capital. Siri now knows Russian, Danish, Dutch, Portuguese, Swedish, Thai, and Turkish. This will be in iOS 8.3 Beta 2. Really enhancing the languages.
Yeah, that's a point of pride for them. There was a recent study, I forget by who, that did a bunch of language tests and showed that Apple was getting really good accuracy results on Mandarin and other languages. And I believe Apple does their own localization for that kind of stuff. So they're putting a lot of effort.
That's a lot of work. I mean, it's one thing to add, a language to a text on an app, but to add recognition, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, because it's like there is text to speech that goes on, and there is voice stuff, but there's also the sequential inference system, which realized that I said Leo before, so obviously I'm still talking about Leo now, and this is how Leo relates to everything, and this is an indication that I want dining directions instead of a movie listing, and there's a lot of dependencies in those frameworks.
What is the latest with photos? I know you and Serenity did a really great review on iMore about the new app that is coming to replace sort of Aperture in Yosemite. Of course, we already have photos on iOS, although I presume there'll be a new iOS version as well to tie it together. Where are we right now? That's going to be in 10.10.3?
Right now it's in the 10.10.3 beta. Apple updated the 10.10.3 beta yesterday. There was a slight and incremental improvement to a photo. It's just the build number changed. I didn't notice any new features, but it's a brand new app, so I'm not anticipating new features in subsequent betas. But yeah, I've been using it going on a month now. I don't have my primary photo library in there still. That's still sitting on a big drive off of my big computer, but I've put a ton of photos, several 1,000 photos in there, and it's working really well. And the best part is that there's this constant challenge between making it accessible to new people, but making it powerful enough for mainstream, maybe prosumer users. And that whole idea of, yes, there's a magic wand if all you want to do is say, make this good, but there's also these 3 sliders for brightness, for color, and for black and white, which is really easy for humans to relate to. But if you are a pro, you can open each of those up and do color and do like balance or saturation or hue or any of the things that you would traditionally find in an Aperture style program. And you can close those up if you don't want them. You can open up a histogram if that's helpful to you, but you never have to see it if you don't want it. And in that, I think, is making it really useful for a lot of people.
Alex, I don't think you've been on since we started talking about this and it replacing Aperture, or have you?
I don't know if I have.
You're an Aperture. You were devotedly Aperture focused.
Yeah, I'm bitter.
You're bitter. Just asking, just question. Have you moved to Lightroom, or are you going to try photo? What are you going to do? Photos?
I'm strongly considering moving to Lightroom for a lot of the stuff, and I think that one of the issues that I had with Aperture actually, and what really killed it is not so much them dropping the support, was that going back and looking at some of my older photo libraries, because I had kind of incorporated other Aperture libraries and old iPhoto libraries. I don't think it was doing it correctly. So one of the bases of Aperture was the idea that it's going to keep track of your library and keep track of where all those photos are, and you don't really have to think about it. It's all in a big package. And that kind of fundamentally doesn't look like it was actually happening very well. And so that was kind of terrifying, because you end up with just a bunch of preview images of stuff that you thought you still had full res version. So I had to go back and dig through archives and find them. But that kind of shook my confidence in the idea of a library that is not being managed. I don't do that very often, and Aperture was one of the few places, because I trust Apple to do that. And so now I'm kind of looking at more moving to something where it's an external collection that I can control. Again,
I would love to know what software you end up choosing.
Most likely it'll be Lightroom. Because Lightroom lets you do that. So you really kind of set up your folders and set up how you're going to do it, and then you import them in. So I think my sister uses it pretty heavily, and
she's a photographer.
she takes a lot of, if you go to familiarlight.com, that's her little blog, and she's an incredible photographer. So, one of the best photographers I know. Yeah. So anyway, so she takes a lot of photos. And so I'm actually, she mostly takes photos of her family. that's
Look at that one.
That's what
fun.
She does.
Yeah.
She does. Well, that's what she posts. She takes a lot of photos for other people, but what she tends to post is, her kids.
So was she an Aperture user that moved to Lightroom, or was she always?
No, she started in Lightroom and she just stayed there. Yeah. And so she. But
what plugin does she use for the monochrome, the black and white?
I don't know. I'll ask her. It's probably a good conversation to have with her. But I'm sure she's not doing anything. She's not probably using anything exotic. Right. She mostly just uses a lot of skill and a good eye.
Yeah. I'm happy with the Lightroom, and somebody in the chat room saying this, the Lightroom app on the iPad, because it syncs to collections on Lightroom, and that's pretty nice. But I'm very interested to see what Apple does with the photos on the desktop and photos on iOS, because there's supposedly going to be some conversation there. And have you got clarification yet, Rene, on the plugin situation for photos?
Yeah, so because I know a lot of people have been wondering about it. The issue with plugins right now is that Apple's new plugin architecture, which is built off extensibility, which is a much larger framework, is only available for iOS. But I think it's impossible for anyone to imagine that won't be moving to OS 10, maybe with 10.11 or something else soon, because it makes a world of sense for that to be available on OS 10 as well.
Yeah. I just bought the latest version of the Alien Skin exposure plugin, which is a great plugin. There's Photoshop and Lightroom have such great support from Nick and from Alien Skin and all these companies that the Silver Effects Pro from Nick is an incredible black and white tool that I feel like that's another argument to move towards the Adobe side of the equation. There is an open source program I've been playing with called Light Zone. If you're price sensitive, although Lightroom plus Photoshop and the Creative Cloud is only $10 a month, which is a good deal.
Yeah, I subscribe to that. It's an amazing value. Yeah. The thing with Photos, though, is it's a brand new app, and you have this twin tension of everyone wanting everything in there immediately and everyone wanting Apple to slow down and make it stable.
Right.
So in this case, they're making the core functionality stable before they add extensibility. If they try to do everything at once, I think we'd have that situation where people complained on the other side again.
Yeah.
Also, I really think that Apple's goal is not to. I think they're willing to sacrifice Pro users to Adobe if it means really having a laser focus on the people who are using the first or the second most popular camera in the world, i.e. the iPhone. This really is optimized for people who are using the phone as the family camera, or at best they have a point and shoot and they slap the card in, and it really is just for sharing stuff with other people. It's so easy. It's so much less fuss and so much less randomness than using Aperture or even iPhoto, that you use it for about 30 minutes and you totally get why they're going in this new direction.
Yeah.
I do think it's a shame that they can't embrace Pro users by continuing development on Aperture as a separate thing, but I totally understand where they're getting there. This is a really clear statement about here's the user that we really need to spend all of our time taking care of.
Have you tried, Alex? Have you tried this open source Light Zone?
I have not tried it yet.
You can see how that they're trying to clone Lightroom when you look at the screen.
I don't think Lightroom, I guess for me, I tend to lean towards, I really want to see competition, but when I'm actually using my own photos, I tend to want to have something that's working. My biggest problem right now is figuring out where to put it on the cloud to back up my entire library, which is about 2 terabytes. So that's been me trying to figure out the best place to store it. Has been my biggest process, and that I kind of want everything on the cloud as well as on there. And I look, right now you just hit a lot of ceilings. So trying to get to 4 terabytes or 5 terabytes of total storage is what I'm trying to make sure that I figure out.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Getting
cheaper, though.
If you watched the Oscars, you saw a couple of things. First of all, I'll mention the Adobe 25 ad, which I thought was really. Did you guys see that ad?
Yeah.
Heartstrings, Leo.
Well, I don't know about heartstrings. It just felt like a great ad.
It was like the triumphal march through a conquered city. It's there are all kinds of things that are Photoshop alternatives, but they're called Photoshop alternatives because there really is just Photoshop for this kind of work.
Oh, just really spectacular. And they did include some movie posters and movie stills and so forth, but it was also just, you know, the kind of random stuff you could do with Photoshop, which was
right.
It's just, I mean, 25 years is amazing.
I can't believe they're 25 years old.
Yeah.
Holy.
I was joking that I don't really miss Aperture because mostly what I used Aperture for was to organize my photos so I could right-click and go edit in Photoshop. And it's amazing how ingrained it is.
I remember when the color palette for Photoshop was a very easy decision.
Yeah.
I remember doing
this pixel to be black or white.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah,
I remember doing the Pixel Core tutorials on how to cut out your avatar and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
We're very specific about our avatars. So that was definitely
perfect.
how we and that was definitely, you know, it was
that's a $2 million half minute, by the way. Apple also spent $1.95 million for a half-minute ad on the Oscars. This one featuring students from Los Angeles County High School for the Arts. I'll show the ad. In the beginning of the ad, what I didn't realize is this is shot on an iPad.
Yeah.
And it features a speech somewhere by Martin Scorsese as the soundtrack. But this whole thing is shot on an iPad.
Yeah. The entire speech is definitely worth watching.
Where's it from?
It's from, he gave a commencement address at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts that he graduated from years and years ago. I just put the link in the Google Doc, and the entire thing is just I'm torn between wanting to listen to this entire 30-minute speech and 7 minutes in wanting to stop what I'm doing and make something.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is just this is so much stronger, I think, than the than the Robin Williams voiceover.
I agree.
Dead Poets Society, because that's sort of, it's easy to make fun of the what will your verse be today,
right?
Whereas this is the one that's saying, look, I don't like the term being live your dreams, because if you're dreaming, you're not doing, and so get out there and do stuff.
Well, and I think that is the thing that's really great about some of these ads, and this one especially, is that it specifically is not just there to sell you on an iPad. It is actually encouraging people, hey, these kids did it. You can go do that.
Here's what you could do that you don't think you can do, but if you had this, you know.
Yeah,
but a lot of them already have it, and more people that are out there doing it with the iPad.
I love the iPad. It's covered with paint.
It also gets rid of the notion. I mean, a lot of people have been very judgmental about people using iPads for photography and for videography, and it's got a tremendous viewfinder. It's very accessible to a lot of people.
Yeah, but would you really?
We used it for CES. We shot a lot of.
Would
CES
you really
stuff with
choose? I mean, let's be honest. If you're Laksha, would you really choose an iPad and make that an assignment? Is that really? I mean, it's a 5-megapixel camera, right?
The new one is 8.
8, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
And after all, this commercial was shot on it, so.
Yeah.
Well,
and I question is, was it edited on it?
Oh, I doubt it was edited on it, right? Or was it? I love it.
I think that should be part of the message, though.
Yeah.
Samsung also had a commercial about, hey, here's this woman who wants to shoot a movie, and she storyboarded it on a Samsung tablet. She shot it on a Note 4, and the Note 4 is arguably the best camera you can buy on any mobile device right now, on any mobile phone right now. But the thing is, you have to then take that file and put it into Final Cut, or to put it probably into an Apple device, Windows too. But you can't just do it all within the phone, right? So you can even shoot something on an iPhone 6 and cut it together into something that's not much more less complicated than what you're seeing in this commercial.
It does have that disclaimer: additional hardware used, but it is shot on an iPad too. So.
Well, they have accessories, like they have the mounts and they have the
jib. Apple
like
doesn't make its own jibs yet.
The color grading software, I wasn't familiar with that, and that looked great too.
Yeah.
And that was all on the iPad.
Student filmmakers featured. I don't know if they did the behind-the-scenes footage. I think they did. And so that's interesting. It's also an ad made by high school kids, in effect.
Well, and I think that it is a really useful thing for teaching, because it lowers the iteration rate. When you're first shooting your first films, what's important is that you get a lot of experience actually doing it. And it's amazing when you're training people how much time they spend, dealing with ingestion, dealing with processing, rather than go shoot it, go do something, get it done quickly. And I think that using an iOS app or an iOS solution, or an Android solution, but using something that they have around all the time really makes a lot of sense. So it's not just a marketing thing. I think it's actually really good from a training perspective.
It's a great viewfinder. You can't knock that. They do have, as they do with all their ads, a page on the Apple website, apple.com/changing-film, that has all the information about the people who shot it, how they did it, what apps they did use.
And there's
Final
an extended
Draft.
page on iTunes that gives you a bunch more apps, like the ones they used as well, and a bunch of other apps in similar category, which is great. Video
Grade was the program that you were talking about to change color saturation. You can also meet the students. I think that's very, very cool. It's not the first time Apple advertised on the Oscars, though. They, in fact, Apple advertised the first iPhone in 2007, shortly before its release. Here's the original ad.
Hello.
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 Hello. Oh, hello, Barney.
Hello. 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 Hello.
Bonjour.
Hi. How you doing there? Yellow. Hello.
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 Just the rights acquisition alone must have cost $10 million for this ad. And there it is. That's a great ad.
Yeah.
Especially for a film buff, right?
Especially for the Oscars, because that was the time when there would be a montage edit in every, at least maybe even two in every single Oscar cast.
Right. Let's see, what else? Oh, hey, here's some good news. It's been for a year. I've been getting emails from people saying, "Why won't Apple fix these issues in the MacBook Pros? Why don't you hammer on them?" Finally, Apple has launched a repair program to fix MacBook Pros sold between February 2011 and February 2013 that have problems with distorted video, no video, or unexpected reboots. Do check to see. Of course, you'll have to fill in your serial numbers. This has happened before in Apple recalls to make sure that yours is affected.
I'm going to check. I think mine's affected. I have an old one that
you've complained about.
I just pulled everything off. And so it was. It's a bummer.
So I'm
really, really glad Apple's done this.
It took them a long time, and people were complaining for an awfully long time. Affected products include 15 and 17-inch MacBook Pro models manufactured in 2011, and 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro prop models. Oh, this is one of them, manufactured between mid-2012 and early 2013. So you go to the Check Your Coverage page, which is selfsolve.apple.com, and then your hardware serial number. Should I do that? I should just check. Where's my serial number?
I got one of them things I'm definitely going to be checking.
I don't have any problems.
I've had a few problems that I can't really explain. Either it's an old system folder, that the system library that needs to be replaced, or it's just an old machine. But yeah, if there's any chance whatsoever I can take this completely old machine into an Apple store and come up with something that has at least a new part in it, I'm definitely that's worth a cut and paste, I think.
Fleet car of computers, Andy.
Actually, you can do this very simply if you go to. Thank you for coming over here, John Slanina, who's done this. You're doing this probably with all our Macs, aren't you? You go to About This Mac, and if you go to the fourth tab now, Service, you can just check, click a link that says check my service and support coverage status. It will automatically send your serial number to Apple and bring you to this self-solve page and tell you your status. In my case, it's covered. It doesn't say really whether there's anything wrong with it, though. Would I get a red box or something if it were? Or should I just go back to that original page and see? Yeah, let me copy the serial number and see. Check your hardware, and I think it's the same information. So I presume if there's a recall, it would. Yeah, it's the same information. If there's a recall, they would tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So people should probably do that. And boy, that makes it as easy as pie. Don't bother going to the webpage first. Just go to About This Mac and click that fourth tab, Service. Then check the link.
And not a single one of those will say Superfish on them.
Ha! Man. Now you know. People always complain about why do Macs cost so much money? Now you know why. You could get a cheap computer, but you'd get something else too. Poor, I feel sorry. I almost said poor Lenovo. I don't feel sorry for Lenovo. Those guys are morons, and
they're not a victim. They're a perpetrator.
They're not a victim. They're a perpetrator. I feel sorry for the people who bought consumer-grade Lenovo laptops. It's not the high-end ones. It's the consumer-grade ones.
In their press release, they were really, really careful to say none of the ThinkPad brand notebooks have been affected.
So
but it really does show you the problems that occur when you really have to try to make these machines at a budget price. That if a company offers you, a manufacturer, X number of dollars per unit to put software pre-shipped on the device, that's another $1 or $2 you can make per unit, and your margins are razor slim to begin with. It's a damn shame, because one of the great advantages of Windows is that you can buy a decent machine for $60 and find something that doesn't. Whereas on the Macs, the minimum buy-in for a notebook is now $900. So, but it's a damn shame. And if I were the mayor of Technologyville, I would basically say, yeah, we're pulling your license, Lenovo. You don't get to sell things in my town for the next year.
No, and frankly, even though it didn't affect the ThinkPad, you can't recommend the ThinkPad anymore, because any company that's, whether it's evil or stupid, it doesn't matter. Any company that does something like Superfish doesn't deserve your business, period.
Yeah. The same brain that made that decision made all the other decisions.
Right.
The press release was dubious too, because the first time it came out, they said that there's no, like they did it to enhance the customer shopping experience, and there was no security concerns, and then that was quickly revised. And then the CTO, I mean, they said we just missed, the whole thing was, it just made, I stopped buying Sony after Rootkit, and I'm going to stop having to do with Lenovo after this.
Yep. The Rootkit and the Sony music discs was enough to sour a lot of people on Sony, and may have something to do with the fact that Sony had to sell its music division. And now this, and I hope it puts Lenovo out of business. Shocking.
I think that if it's a Tylenol sort of situation where they really, if they have one chance to really save themselves and their brand, and that is to be so absolutely willing to stab themselves in the heart to not only fix what the problem they created, but also to demonstrate that we didn't just simply say our bad and send out a few $10 gift cards to make it up to people. We've actually done away with the approvals process that led this to happen. A certain person they might have to sacrifice a goat in the form of an executive that has to leave the company. They're going to have to rebuild trust. The Tylenol case is a good example. It's different in that they were actually the victims of product tampering from an outside force, but they did not wait 10 seconds. They said, we're pulling all of our product off the shelves. We are introducing brand new product that cannot be tampered with. We are disposing with this packaging that was vulnerable. And that's why, despite the fact that the entire news story for an entire week was that people were getting that there was tampered product out there, it became, we took this seriously. Now we realize there's a problem, and you can trust our brand again. Lenovo has a long hill to climb. Good news for Apple, though. They're just sitting back and saying, "Yep."
But that's the thing. The company value. They some people will buy based, like, cheapness is the most important feature for them, and Apple is saying that we want to make this sort of like a good experience the most important feature for us, and they're willing to put not just their words behind it, but a significant amount of their buying experience behind it. And you can go to a Microsoft store and get Microsoft Signature or get a Surface that also doesn't have this adware. It'll cost a little bit more, but I think the cost is more than made up for by the value of what you get for it.
Well, and this underlines what Tim Cook said, which is that if you're not buying the product, you are the product. Yeah. If you're not, and it turns out if you're not paying a lot for the product, you might be the product too. So I think that's the issue.
I don't know if you guys saw it, but How To Geek did the follow-up to their downloads.com or downloads.net. I forget the exact URL, where they went and downloaded 10 of the most popular apps.
Horrible.
Yeah, and 2 of them have Superfish on them. So, I mean,
so let's just really make this clear. When you download something from the cnetdownloads.com site, and we've talked about this before, part of the download of this other company's software, usually free or shareware, is a downloader which wraps around it, which downloads many other things. You can say no, but you got to be quick. Yeah. Among other, and by the way, who owns CNET? Oh, yes, CBS. Among other things, it downloads 2 different items with Superfish on it, which means you've got that Commodia certificate on there, which means your machine is now compromised.
And people, you can download bad Mac software. You can get adware on the Mac. Like a lot of third-party Flash download sites love to throw adware on it. So you should only get Flash ever from Adobe if you really want it. But it just the perniciousness of the adware it's appalling.
Shocking.
I don't have better language. Yeah.
Shocking.
Bring it back to Apple. I mean, they do. I don't like that quote because I think it's kind of glib, and it hides the fact that we're not selling you a $1,500 notebook for $900. We are selling you a product at a pretty substantial markup, and that's what our business is based on. And also the fact that if the entire world built all of their machines the way that Apple builds theirs, how many people would not have a computer in their houses or homes or in their classrooms? Because you just can't have a world in which the minimum buy-in is $900 for
I agree. I wonder, though, how much money...
I'm glad there's versatility. I'm glad there's just variety out there.
Yeah, and I recommend if you're going to buy a Windows machine, you go to Microsoft's store and you buy a signature PC, which will have none of that stuff on it, and Microsoft makes sure of that. And I just wonder how much Lenovo makes on all the crapware, or HP, or any of these companies.
They said not much. That was the worst part of the press release.
Right. So if I had to pay $50 more for a computer, it's still not $900. Do that, right? Just do that.
Yeah. You can get some very decent stuff for $500 or $600, and for a lot of people, that $300 is the difference between someone owning their own machine and having to share it with a couple of people. Right. So.
But like, put it on the box too. Say because some people are worried that people will always buy the cheapest machine, so they have to have the cheapest machine, and then they have to figure out some other way to make money. Just make that a point of pride or a point of value on the box, so that someone knows that if it's $20, $30, $50 more, this computer ships without adware. Blah blah. Like whatever.
Dell
you
used to do that. Dell used to have a checkbox that you could say, "I will pay." Are you willing to pay a little bit more and not have anything on there? Have a clean install of Windows, and you could check that. And I wish they continue to do that. They don't. Although to their credit, Dell, I just bought a Dell laptop that does not have much. It has one piece of trialware McAfee, which is easy to remove.
That's why I absolutely don't like it when people make fun of Amazon for selling tablets that have ads on them. That is absolutely the way they should do it. They said if it is you can choose, as an extra $30 more important to you than having ads, we will give you the free choice. Here are the prices of both of them. We feel as though the ads are inobtrusive, but that's not. We're not going to force them on you, nor are we going to force you to pay $30 that maybe you don't really have. Up to you.
If you do the ads, make them secure. Please, make them secure.
We're going to take a break, and because we want to make some room, because Steve Gibson is coming up in about 15 minutes, and he, of course, is going to cover this, I'm sure, the Superfish issue from a technical point of view, not from a commercial point of view, but from the technical point of view of what it was, what it did, and what it means. But before we go into our break, and you guys can get ready with your picks of the week, I do want to mention this is Steve Jobs' 60th birthday today. Tim Cook remembering Steve on Twitter, who would have turned 60 today. The only way to do great work is to love what you do, and a really good picture of Steve. 60 years old today. It's so sad that he was not here to celebrate that birthday. Guys, get your picks ready. First, a word from LegalZoom.com. LegalZoom, not a law firm. They can't connect you with an independent attorney, but I think they're better than a law firm because LegalZoom helps you get your life organized at LegalZoom.com, whether it's protecting your family with a will or living trust or take control of your family's future, LegalZoom can help. There's no easier way to make sure your family's legally taken care of. Whether it's taking control of your financial affairs, whether you're starting a business or you have one already, LegalZoom can help you form your business and provide the support you need to run it successfully. I mentioned before we had Ron Wayne on Triangulation about a month ago. He was one of the folks who helped found Apple with Jobs and Wozniak, but he bowed out very quickly because he realized Apple was unincorporated. It was just a company, and that meant he, as the only guy who had any real assets, was liable. Dude, if they'd only had LegalZoom way back when, they do now for 10 years. In fact, I used LegalZoom to protect us with an LLC. It's helped millions of people get the personalized attention they need. And if you need legal advice or guidance, the great thing is they can connect you with an independent attorney in most states. They're not a law firm, but they can connect you with attorneys. You can read the attorney's profile, unedited reviews. You can get a really good sense, and it's a very affordable pre-negotiated rate. So I got to tell you, there is no reason not to use LegalZoom. Just go there and see all the things you can do. Don't wait any longer. Get your life in order. Go to LegalZoom.com and use our offer code MBW. We'll get you $10 off at checkout. For legal help you can count on for your family, your small business, LegalZoom.com. And remember, the offer code MBW, that'll get you $10 off. And it's a way that you can let them know you heard about it on MacBreak Weekly. We thank them so much for their support. LegalZoom.com. Forgot to mention that Modern Family is going to be on tomorrow, and you probably all know that it's the episode that the entire episode takes place inside a MacBook Pro, including FaceTime calls, messages from the family. The episode's called Connection Lost, and Apple says we did not pay for this. we were happy to provide the equipment, and I imagine Apple has a promotional deal with Modern Family because you see a lot of iPads and stuff on Modern Family, but that just means they give them in-kind equipment.
And then I've been on a lot of productions actually that have gotten the support from Apple.
Yeah.
And they don't pay for it. They, in fact, generally, I mean, it seems like they're fielding hundreds of these requests a week.
Yeah.
And people will think of a crazy thing because they know that they'll get a lot of promotion by doing something crazy like this. So that really they don't. But they call Apple. What you do is you call Apple and say, "Hey, can I have a couple laptops and a Mac Pro and this is what we want to do?" And it's an arduous process to do that with Apple. It used to be very easy. When Steve Jobs came back in, it closed down pretty quickly. It used to be a very freewheeling system that is no longer that way. But I don't believe that Apple paid anything, but I'm sure that someone, and I don't think they approached them with the idea. I think that they came up with the idea and they came to Apple and said, we need a bunch of extra equipment to do that, and Apple loaned it to them.
There's some interesting behind-the-scenes stuff. Steve Levitan, who created Modern Family, says he got the inspiration because he has 2 kids in college, and they do a lot of FaceTiming. And he was working one day with a number of emails and websites open on his machine. Video chat from his daughter popped up. He saw everything, and his wife doing something behind him. And he says, I realized on that screen you could tell so much about my life. Just if all you saw was the screen. John Brown was involved in this. You know John Brown, don't you, Alex?
I don't know if I know
Motion graphics guy, very well-known name. So Levitan went to John Brown and shot they prevised it with crew members as a proof of concept. Brown put the footage together into a mock-up of Claire's computer screen, and they had their storyboards. They were a little worried, given the resolution of that the image would lose clarity when they pushed in on elements. So instead, Brown duplicated and animated, get this, the entire Mac interface manually at 4 times the resolution so they can push the camera in. So you're not actually looking at a Mac Pro screen. You're looking at a simulated screen. Brown said he worked on the assets for Yosemite when Yosemite was in beta. And so he had to, they actually shot it before Yosemite came out, but so apparently they had to tweak and swap things around.
I mean, John Siracusa.
Yeah, John Siracusa had to do that for his screenshots, right? Brown said it was frustrating to be like Act 1 totally locked and then come back Monday and hear the FaceTime notification had changed. So they really they put some effort into making this look like Yosemite.
Which is funny because a lot of people wouldn't have noticed. I mean, it wouldn't have been a big deal for that. So that just shows you there's a lot of attention to detail.
So many horrible iPhone interfaces on TV. Like they get a text message and a thing pops up and it looks completely alien.
Well, we'll watch tomorrow. I think that's something to look at is how closely did they really, since you now know it's not a Mac Pro, it's a simulated Mac Pro.
Do you remember that video from the iPhone 4 when they introduced FaceTime and Scott was just saying, I like to look into my kid's eyes and see, how are you doing? It was just so intense. And I picture that being on the Modern Family screen.
You will notice one thing, and this comes from a great article in The Verge by Brian Bishop. He says, one thing will stand out at you. FaceTime, they wanted to have multiple video chats at the same time on the screen, which FaceTime can't do. But they had that going. So you'll notice that. You may say to yourself, "Whoa, I didn't know you could do that." Well, you can't. Yeah. And apparently, Brown did not aesthetically like the heavy use of translucency in Yosemite. That was such a thorn in my side. Everything is transparent. When the message scrolls up, you can sort of see it through the top of message. So,
well, it becomes, especially if you're rebuilding the interface, that becomes a big deal.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I've had to do a lot. I've had to do quite a few projects where we rebuild and reanimate interfaces.
Right.
And the simplest things that you think that you just do while you're in the interface, you're animating that is an entirely different world.
Well, he picked the easy solution. He just decided Claire, the mom in the show, is kind of a neatnik. I think you know that if you watch the show. So she's turned off translucency in the settings.
Right. She went to Daring Fireball with all the instructions.
Is it terminal command you have to do? It's not in the control panel?
No, I think you put on in accessibility settings.
It's accessibility. All right. Well, you can see there's no translucency here.
It's actually marked something like tone it down.
Tone it down.
Give me a break. It's actually called "Give Me a Break" with a translucency.
Enough already.
Enough with the translucency. It's a little picture of Paul Reiser going.
I'm trying to do playback here, please. Alex, Lindsay, your pick of the week.
So I do a lot of walkthroughs for locations, so location scouting. And one of the things that we do is we build 3D models of almost every place that we work. So we have to figure out where our cameras are going to be, and a lot of times we won't have very much time when we get there, so we have to block everything out. And so one of the things that I need to do is take pictures and then put measurements on. So I've got a little I got this little laser pointer, which I can make a hardware pick for the day. It's not really a Mac, but Bosch, my little Bosch. So I take little laser shots of exactly how high the building is and the dimensions. And I use a program on my iPhone called My Measures Pro. And what it does, there's My Measures and there's My Measures Pro. And what you can do is you basically take the photo, and then I take measurements, and then I just kind of use my finger to kind of create arrows. You can just kind of pinch your fingers away from each other, and you'll create little arrows, and then you can just kind of say how big everything is.
But you have to measure it yourself. It doesn't measure it for you.
It doesn't measure it for you. And I have never found that at a professional level, I have never found that the measuring for you really works.
Yeah, they have those tools, but yeah, they're always a little off.
They're always a little off. And if they're off by a couple inches, sometimes we end up in big problems because we bought railing for it and everything else. And so we really wanted to, I'm happy to do the measurement, but I just needed something quickly so that I can just put in the measurements where they make sense. For a long time, I was like drawing on them with my finger and saying 25 feet. No one could read it. And so this is a great little app that just kind of does all of those things. And I get a series of photos, and then I send them out, and so it keeps it in folders, and you can kind of have, sections of this location after this location with those measurements. And it's just a great way to, if you're, doing that kind of thing, and it might be you're planning something for your house, or in my case, you're doing, location scouting. It's a great way to just kind of send it back or keep track of it on top of the photo. So that's it.
Neat. Neato. My Measure and Dimension Pro. And it's what, $3, $4?
Yeah, something like that. A coffee.
What do you see, Jason?
$8.99.
$8.99. All right. 2 cups of coffee.
big spender. Yeah, a really nice cup of coffee.
A triple breve venti.
Yeah, exactly. My kind of coffee.
Rene, Ritchie, pick of the week, sir.
So I'm piggybacking off Serenity Caldwell again. Big surprise. I only had a chance to play with this a little bit, but she's done a full review already, and it's called Forge. It's by the people who make the Adonit Jot Touch styluses, which are the pressure-sensitive styluses, and it's optimized for use with those styluses. And what it is it's a drawing application, almost like paper by 53, whatever number they are.
Yeah, 53, yeah.
Yeah, 53. So it's got the same kind of tools, markers and pencils and things like that. But what it does is it lets you storyboard as well. So those pictures go down into little boxes, and you can do very quick, very nuanced iterations. I stuck the link for Serenity's thing in the Google Doc as well, and you can see she's done a whole series of sketches, and you can page through all of them.
Oh, don't tell me Serenity is also a good artist.
She is a terrific artist.
I hate her. She's just too
She's
accomplished.
Good at everything. She's good at everything. Threat. Yeah. Amazing. It's excellent. It works with the stylus. You can really get a sense of costume design or animation or any sort of iconography. I was quickly using it to make different ideas for album art that we're working on, and then you can just sort of page through them. You can stick items on the corner and move them between projects. You can export as a PNG or a PDF file. And it's a really, really great experience. It just came out today, so it's a version 1, so it is limited. You can't do everything with it yet, but they chose really, really smart things to start off with. And as much as I love paper, I like the fact that we're getting this sort of vibrant, creative ecosystem on the iPad. There's things like Adobe Voice, and there's all sorts of really great apps. And this, to me, is what sort of unlocks the potential of the iPad, is the ability to use it as a much larger canvas for things that would simply be too small on your iPhone to do. So it's called Forge, again, by Adonit.
Forge.
Yeah.
Forge. Thank you for that pick, Mr. Andy Ihnatko.
Mine is a really cool music app. Thanks to CraneCam 3000, the future of video podcasting. There's so much going on in classical music that you enjoy, like the pretty music, but then like when somebody who knows what they're talking about can explain what's actually going on with a piece of music, we get something familiar like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. What this app does is it has recordings of 4 different recordings in 4 different decades, and it will take you through the entire score. You can see down here, note for note,
That's
showing
so
you
cool.
these are lighting up to show you here's what sections of the orchestra are actually doing. Here's video of the conductor and the orchestra actually playing it, and there's captions like down here to show you here's what this movement is doing. Here's how the composer is now setting this section of the orchestra against this other section of the orchestra. There's just hours and hours, and you can switch between like different composers to see how different conductors to see how each of these conductors has decided to interpret the same text. There's also like documentary, like interview footage to people explaining the history behind it, the history of Beethoven, like what was going on in his mind at this point in his life. It's again, there are a few pieces of classical music that are more well known than the Ninth, but you have no idea how much is going on here and how this thing was put together. And I just wound up listening to this piece of music like 4 times in a row just to see, oh, well, okay, I'm not going to pretend to understand exactly why Bernstein decided to go that way instead of this other conductor. It's not cheap. It's not cheap. It's a free download, and you get about 2 minutes of this. For $13.99, you get all 4 recordings, all 4 videos, and the entire symphony illustrated this way. So it really is pretty exciting. There's also an iPhone version of it that's certainly not as cool as the iPad version, but it's only $5.99. If you do buy the iPhone version, that they will let you apply that, I think, towards unlocking the iPad edition too. But just supremely entertaining. This is the same publisher that also publishes Elements, by the way, the periodic table of the Elements Explorer, and they really just show you the potential of devices like the iPad. There's no way to really teach stuff like this as clearly and as compellingly as having a fully interactive app like this. And of course, you can you can scrub, you can go check out these things like it's just really, really cool.
That's not new. I think I've seen that before. Maybe it's another symphony.
I think it was they have a couple of different educational apps. I don't know when this was released. I think it was released about a year ago, maybe.
Okay, yeah. I love this. This is so cool.
I just found it last week, and it's like
Yeah, very much
it's
like
pricey. It's a real thrill to finally recommending something that's more expensive than whatever Alex is picking. But this is a lot of this is $14 for the entertainment.
And I'm thinking they do other musical things too. Yeah,
I think they have another musical piece. They also have another educational app that walks you through Winston Churchill's biography and his thought processes.
Yeah. Nice stuff. We're going to get out of here because we got to get ready for security. Now, a couple of things, though, I'll mention. If you use an iPad, and we mentioned this yesterday on iPad today, both Google's Inbox app, which is their email app, which I love, and Google Play Music now have iPad native versions. Thank you, finally.
Oh, and YouTube Kids, Leo.
And YouTube Kids came out yesterday, which is a kid version of YouTube, limited to just videos that are kid-friendly. I think that's cool.
Awesome.
And somebody in the chat room pointed out, and I should mention this as well, and I'm sure we'll talk a little more about it another time, but Firefox 36 just came out featuring built-in video connections, no download of software. They're using something called Telefonica. I know WebRTC, right, is the Chrome Google version of this. I don't know if you can talk to somebody other than people using Firefox, but that's kind of interesting that this is kind of built in. You just send
WebRTC is audio, I think, and WebM or something is video.
Oh, okay. But I actually now have a video conference running in the latest Mozilla, and I could just copy the link and paste it in, and you can call me and without any additional download. So that's kind of cool.
Are Firefox and Facebook in a version number arms race?
I think so. I think 36 is, yeah, and it updates magically in the background all the time too. Chrome is in 40, so you know.
Oh,
back in my day,
it's 4 better.
It's using WebRTC.
This uses WebRTC?
Yeah,
then it should be compatible with Chrome.
It should be, yes.
That's interesting. So
it just makes it much more. It just makes it much more turnkey.
Yeah. Audio or video or both. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are so happy to have you every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. 1900 UTC. That's when we do it live. Chat room is so valuable, so please, if you could be here live and in the chat room, that would be neat and nifty. But if not, don't worry about it, because we make on-demand audio and video available, of course, at our website, twit.tv/MBW, youtube.com/MacBreakWeekly, and wherever podcasts are aggregated like iTunes. And, of course, the apps. There are apps on every platform. iOS has Apple's own app, plus Marco's great app. And there's so many good podcast apps now. And we're on all of them. All you have to do is subscribe. That way you'll get each and every episode. Or use the great Twit apps. There's iOS, Android, Roku, Windows Phone apps. We didn't do them. All done by great third-party developers, and we thank them for their efforts. Thank you for being here. Now back to work, because break time, it's over.